What is comedy's purpose in society? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is comedy's purpose in society? So, comedy is an art form, which it's a form of expression and communication whose chief aim is to elicit laughter in a person or a group of people. And in a previous video, I go into, why is a joke funny and what is laughter? Laughter essentially is it's a liberating moment of self-integration that elicits an emotion so big and so joyous that instead of trying to articulate it or break it down, we just lose control and laugh. The energy comes out. The integration is so intense. It's such an intense moment of self-integration on so many levels of so many different things that we laugh. So what is the purpose of that in society? Because society and life, it's supposed to be, like this very like straightforward, serious, dramatic affair. Yet here we are, humans have comedy, which is it's a crazy thing because most other species don't have it. Now, there are some other species that appear to have a sense of humor. You can look up videos of parrots on YouTube, and parrots seem to have a sense of humor, like an operating sense of humor, and certain primates seem to have a sense of humor. They don't seem like they're telling jokes yet, but they do seem like they have basic pranks or whatever, which is cool. That's evolutionary progress. But humans, we've like, if there's a gold medal for comedy, humans would get it. Like, we spend a significant amount of time intellectualizing the world, and we came up with comedy as a way to integrate concepts and enjoy ourselves as a form of entertainment, as a form of blissful communication, right? But what's its purpose to society? Well, I have found that comedy it's the best way to get around people's defense mechanisms or their inertia to new concepts and ideas and perspectives. So something that you couldn't say straightforward to somebody, you see that they have something that's in their unconscious or something that's buried behind a defense mechanism or something that they've been ideological about, and they have no interest in changing their mind because, by Jove, they know this to be true, and this is the only thing that's true, and, they'll die before they change their mind about this thing, right? And so they're on the lookout for anything that's going to try to change that, right? In the first two cases where there's defense mechanisms or ideological behavior occurring, part of those, the defense and the ideology, is that they usually have a program running in their head that's scanning for things that protect whatever the core ideology is, which is how you know it's not proper. That's how you know you have an improper, like an ideology is improper. But technically, like any ideology other than like being an open-minded flow of the universe and allowing like evolutionary thought to occur is really going to get you like stagnated. But people get into hyper-specific ones, and so when they get into hyper-specific ideologies or hyper-specific defense mechanisms, they have a program running in their mind that scans for things that would disrupt that core ideology, okay? As opposed to if somebody has it in the unconscious, and the unconscious, since it's unconscious, their conscious activity is not necessarily scanning it to the level of hyperspecificity, but their emotional field and the way they direct their life has in the value to protect it, to keep it in the unconscious. So that's where the ignorance is bliss comes in, is people saying, oh, I just don't want to know. And then they spend their life not knowing. In comes comedy. Out of all the things, there might be a couple other things, but like out of all the things, comedy is the most evolved form of communication that deals with those situations. Now, comedy is not specifically for that, because comedy is also for just general enjoyment and people that aren't trying to guard against stuff, and it's not always super offensive like that to try to get around. But comedy is the main tool for that. it is the main tool to communicate principles, concepts, and stimulate integrations and awarenesses in people who are actively trying to avoid it or don't want it to happen. So in terms of society, what's the use of that? Well, you know, the traditional, much well-documented use of comedy in that regard is to send messages from the less powerful peoples in society to the more powerful ones. Because when people get buttressed in power, they have their minds made up that they're in a loop of self-validation, so they don't really want to hear stuff from anybody. And that's where comedians come in, or comedy comes in, because now you have a language that seems frivolous or seems just like pure entertainment, and it can get through the authoritarian measures, the ideological measures. It can get through all these different measures of decorum and this and that, and reach the intended audience. It can get there, and you can get it in there surreptitiously. It can be a covert messaging system to get truthful perspectives, integrations, and concepts into people who don't necessarily want them, and even get them to enjoy it, right? They can even get them to enjoy it. So just on that factor alone, comedy is a means of circumventing control structures. And I think many would agree that it's the most effective form of circumventing control structures that we have available to us. It's also very enjoyable. And it's also one of those things where when people attack comedians and people practicing comedy in that manner, if they are persecuted, then pretty much the whole society knows that the person doing the attacking is, wrong. They know they got problems, power problems or whatever. So on the one hand, so comedy just on a societal function can do that. It can circumvent power structures, defense structures, all these different things, and help restore the balance of power to a society at large, which is, that's one of the most powerful things that you can do. And it does it peacefully. It does it non-violently. It does it just through communication. It does it through intelligence. And it does it through resonation. And it does it through truth. Because for the comedy to be effective, it has to be truthful. It can be funny, but then the funny is the delivery package for the truth. Right? So that alone is what it does on the big macro level for society, is it gets information to people who need it. And on the other spectrums for society, comedy provides a tremendous amount of integration and healing for all sorts of demographics, all sorts of groups. And it really gets to areas where traditional education or life experience or all sorts of things doesn't necessarily get into, because as people go through life, there will be common issues and common topics and subjects and principles that, through whatever reason, just because we don't want to deal with it, or lack of ability, or just because we're not really thinking about it, a lot of things get put into the unconscious, both the individual unconscious and the collective unconscious, which just means there's just stuff we're not thinking about. And comedy, has a great way of bringing the unconscious into the conscious for groups and for society. It doesn't really matter. It's like the joke or the comedy, it can shift the focus of the consciousness working through individuals and groups to bring into the light subjects and issues and principles that seem to be necessary for the moment. And you'll know they're necessary because when people laugh, that's the validation of, yes, that's the flow, that's the timeline. These are the things that we're looking to know about. These are the things that, for whatever reason, we didn't have the ability to articulate it, or the bravery to say it in public, or we just were unaware of it, or whatever. Comedy's that moment where people go, oh, yeah, I thought about that. Yeah, I think that's true. Somebody's saying it. Oh, this is great. What a relief. Comedy, laughing is also the sound of relief. Ha ha, all right, cool. Other people think that way. Yeah, that's true. I thought about that and I knew it's true, but now you're saying it, and we all sort of validate in the emotional, give the emotional validation that it deserves. Now we're here. Now that's sort of like set in. Now we've learned something. We've grown. Our neural networks have grown. Our synapses have fired. New connections have been made in our brains. I feel more comfortable with this like new emotional sense that I have about this particular topic, whatever it is. Right? So there's that. So comedy heals people. It can heal people in masses. It can heal people in groups, and it does it in the moment. And it does it in an organic way because it's straightforward communication. There's not much pretense on the practice of comedy. The practice of comedy doesn't have religious overtones or spiritual overtones or even ritualistic overtones, right? Because you can just tell a joke to somebody at the office, or you can tell a joke to somebody in a club, whatever. Comedy can happen anywhere. It's spontaneous. And although I'm focusing on the verbal, intellectual version of it, where it's transferring ideas and spheres and perspectives and issues to people in their brain, comedy is everything. It's physicality. Comedy's it's not just social issues, it's our relation to life, like physical comedy, like, oh, just like slipping on a banana peel. Oh, that's funny. Because why? Because you're learning about gravity. Oh, it's funny that you were incompetent at that. That's hilarious because I'm good at that. And like, there you go. You fell. You can't even do the basic thing, right? It draws our attention to even the basics. Even kids laugh. Watch kids. Kids laugh all day long. They think everything's hysterical because when you're learning, it's a great tool to be able to laugh at learning. Learning and laughing, it's a great mix. Learning and laughing, LOL, like learning on laughing, laughing on learning, right? Laughing on learning. And it's a great combination to positively reinforce learning with laughing, because sometimes you get so many emotions, you can't put them all through your brain, and you're learning so much, like emotional learnings, right? Like, oh, my heart feels this way, or my other emotions feel this way in a particular situation, or now I understand why my emotions felt a certain way. It doesn't always have to be intellectualized. In fact, emotional learnings can be done a disservice by trying to force them through the intellect, and vice versa. You can't try to make your heart understand your mind always. I mean, you can, but not always. Um, so it's good to have different kinds of comedy. There can be, that's why physical comedy or slapstick comedy, uh, they have a place separated from like stand-up comedy or intellectual comedy, because comedy it's a perspective on life, right? It's a perspective on life that is liberating, because it's an area of life that you can consciously live in joy, you can consciously live in positivity, you can consciously live in integration and growth in a way that allows for a positive interaction with learning and failure and acceptance and integration. And basically, it's a way that you can live life that elevates you above the common instinctual animal status of just being in the routine and being a slave to your instincts and being a slave to this and that or whatever. And even just like, oh, well, I'll accept information in a very like serious way all the time. Comedy is a way that we've unlocked as humans. I think it's one of the greatest gifts in the human experience. It's a lifestyle that we can live where we can integrate life and learn about life and grow in a non-shameful, joyous way. So we can still make our mistakes and still have our foibles and still do all this stuff, but we can have a sense of humor about it. And you don't use it as an after-the-fact rationalization to excuse your lack of learning or your idiocy, although you can. But it's sort of the lubrication of life that gives you a way, a vibe to be able to interact and learn with people, with life, with animals, with anything. It gives you a buffer. It gives you like an energy buffer, and like it gives you permission to enjoy your life. It gives you permission to integrate your life experience in a way that you find pleasing, and you can have a laugh about it, so that you don't go insane, so that you don't relegate everything to having to be intellectually quantized. Every little tedious part of your life has to go through your brain. It has to have a reason. It has to have this, has to have that. They might all have a reason. They probably do, cause and effect, right? But in comedy, you can just have a zip file of a whole bunch of stuff you learn at once, laugh it off, and then it's a part of you. And then the parts that you need will come up later. You go, oh, I remember that. That's why I laughed at that. Oh, that's funny. This and that, right? Things, and they open us up. They open up. They allow us to evolve, to grow our social behavior, to be less shameful, to like quit, to demystify life, and to make it less of a serious, rigorous protocol that we engage in, and more of a joyous, enjoyable experience that we're going through and integrating as we go through, and we can share with others. And it also circumvents systems of control and people not being fun. And it can bring us together. It can bring us together in ways that very few other things can. So in that way, comedy, very valuable to society. And I go so far as to say I'd be suspicious and skeptical of societies that don't allow for comedy, because it's one of the greatest gifts that we have in the human experience. So what is comedy, and why is it important to society? For all those reasons, and I'm sure a ton more. You guys are welcome to comment it or make your own videos about it. But yeah, I think that's pretty good starter on comedy. So thanks for stopping by Philosopher's Corner. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good day.